Maya Angelou once said, hate has caused a lot of problems in the world, but not solved one yet. The lead starts right now. A supermarket massacre motivated by racism and other forms of hate, officials say. This hour, more victims identified as we learn new details about another threat from the suspected killer months before Saturday's attack. Plus, Ukraine's secret police on a special mission to weed out Russian spies among the Ukrainian military and civilian population. And breaking now, new recommendations from the American Academy of Pediatrics for parents dealing with the baby formula shortage. We will bring that right to you.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Welcome to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper, and we start today with our national lead. Any moment we expect an update from Buffalo police after that racist massacre in upstate New York. 10 innocent people killed by a racist domestic terrorist who targeted individuals in a grocery store in a predominantly black area of town on Saturday. Locals officials say it actually could have been even worse. Police believe the shooter planned to continue his rampage on Saturday after leaving the store with his sick goal of killing as many black people as possible. The shooter was wearing tactical gear, armed with an AR-15 style semi-automatic rifle. Police say he had surveilled the area the day before. This new video, just in, shows the moment the suspect was arrested. The Erie County Sheriff called the attack a, quote, straight-up, racially motivated hate crime from somebody outside of our community, unquote. The alleged killer lived at home with his parents more than 3 hours away. Today, investigators are parsing through a 180-page screed allegedly written by the killer. The author details how he had been radicalized by reading online message boards and was fixated on what's known as white replacement theory. That's this racist, false idea that forces are conspiring to slowly and intentionally replace white people in the United States with minorities and immigrants. Elements of this racist, false theory have been cited as motivating other mass murderers in recent years, ones who targeted minorities, from the Tree of Life synagogue massacre of Jews in Pittsburgh 2018, to the El Paso Walmart slaughter of Latinos and the mosque attacks on Muslims in Christchurch, New Zealand in 2019. CNN's Brian Todd starts off our coverage today from Conklin, New York, where the suspected killer is from, with more on what investigators are learning today about the meticulous planning behind this horrific attack.
This was a straight-up hate crime, pure evil.
Police are learning about the meticulous planning that went into the massacre of 10 people at a Buffalo store and how it could have been worse.
He had plans, had he gotten out of here, to continue his rampage and continue shooting people. He'd even spoken about possibly going to another store.
The gunman killed several people in the parking lot, exchanged gunfire with a security guard, and shot more people in the store before surrendering to police.
He was very heavily armed. He had tactical gear. He had a tactical helmet on. He had a camera that he was live streaming what he was doing.
CNN obtained a 180-page statement attributed to the suspect, which was posted online just before the attack. The document details how the shooter has been radicalized by online message boards, describing the Great Replacement Theory, which suggests the false belief that the white race is dying out.
He had the N-word, which unfortunately was carved into one of his weapons. Clearly, he was bent on hate. He was focused on a replacement theory, this theory that white individuals would be replaced by immigrants and people of color and Jewish individuals.
The shooter allegedly wrote he'd chosen the store based on the racial makeup of its zip code, and he had been serious about carrying out the attack since January. He'd been buying ammo, surplus military gear, and shooting irregularly, and had mapped out the store, intending to shoot all black people. The main gun, a Bushmaster XM15, was bought from this gun store before he illegally modified it. But according to the New York Times, he had no problem purchasing the weapon even after an incident at the Susquehanna Valley High School last June, when he was a student there. On the honor roll, school documents show.
The gun dealer was able to sell these weapons to this individual because there were no red flags that came up.
A spokesperson for the school district tells CNN the suspect was interviewed by police after he made an ominous reference to murder-suicide in a school project, although there was no specific threat.
He stated a facility. I'm not sure if it was a hospital or a mental health facility for a day and a half.
The gunman's neighbors we spoke to didn't want to give their names. They are frustrated.
Something got missed. You know, if he was flagged in high school, why didn't he get the mental health care he needed then? And the system failed him that caused this tragedy to occur.
They say the shooter was quiet and seemed like a normal teenager.
Then when I found out he was from Broome County, I says, I sure as hell hope he isn't from Conklin. So, and then it turns out he was. And then it turns out he's loose on my street. So we were all totally shocked about this whole thing.
The suspect has pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder. I spoke to the owner of a convenience store where the suspect worked until about 3 months ago, who described him as a very quiet employee, that he didn't stand out much beyond that. And this owner said to me, quote, I'm sure he'll pay a huge price for this, as he should. Jake?
Brian Todd in Conklin, New York for us. Thanks so much. Today we're learning more about the 10 people who senselessly lost their lives on Saturday. They ranged in age from 32 to 86. Among them was Aaron Salter. Mr. Salter was working as the supermarket security guard. He fired multiple shots at the suspect, and as CNN's Jason Carroll reports for us now, his actions saved the lives of multiple people inside the store when the rampage began.
He died while trying to save others. That's how those who knew Aaron Salter say he should be remembered.
He was a strong individual. He was a warm individual, a real caring person, cared about the community, someone who devoted a lot of his life to public safety, to keeping the community safe.
Buffalo's mayor, Byron Brown, knew Salter for years, back when Salter was a Buffalo police officer.
I remember first meeting him through his parents, Aaron and Carol Salter, very warm people. They had a business in the community, and I saw him as a loving son, always trying to take care of his parents, make sure his parents were okay. That's the kind of person that he was. He had a caring spirit and a desire to take care of other people.
That desire helped Salter rise through the ranks in the police department. He eventually became a lieutenant. His love of community and law enforcement was one of the reasons he went to work as a security guard at the top supermarket after he retired from the force. Saturday, armed only with a handgun, he engaged the shooter.
He went down fighting. He came in, he went towards the gunfire, he went towards the fight. He shot the individual, but because of his armor plating vest, it had no effect on him.
Law enforcement officials say it is clear he saved many lives.
My daughter was crouched down in the front end for the entire shooting.
His actions gave Fragrance Harris Stanfield, who works at the market with her daughter, the time they needed to take cover.
Everyone started running at that point. I grabbed my daughter, kept running until I got all the way to the back door.
Those who knew Salter say even though he retired from the force, he never stopped being a police officer.
I think he would want to be remembered as someone who cared about his community, who cared about his family, and someone that did his job and stood up when other people were in danger trying to keep others safe.
Salter was 55 years old, even though he was not a police officer at the time of his death. Due to his actions, there has been this movement up there in Buffalo to have him buried with a formal service as if he was an active police officer. The mayor is behind that, waiting to hear from the family to see what is best. Jake.
Jason Carroll in New York, thanks so much. Officials in Buffalo are starting a news conference about the latest information. Let's listen in.
Continue to move forward as a strong city of Buffalo, county of Erie, and Western New York region. Late today, we have been made aware of many social media posts going around with possible threats. I want to be clear. Buffalo Police and our partnering law enforcement agencies standing here are investigating these social media posts and will prosecute if necessary. And I want to emphasize arrests have already been made, and you'll be hearing more about those. I'm now going to turn things over to Buffalo Police Commissioner Joseph Gramaglia.
Thank you, Mayor. So, as I said before, this is a very long investigation. It's going to continue to be a very lengthy investigation. The scene is still being processed. Search warrants have been obtained and executed, and they will still be obtained There's a lot of digital footprint, electronics that we'll have to go through. So that process is ongoing. Information has also come as a result of some of this investigation that the individual was here a few months ago, back in early March. So as I said, there's a lot of material to go through, so that we have confirmed now that it appears that individual was here back a couple of months ago in early March. So at this point, like I said, it's going to be a lengthy investigation. Things will change, information will change as we become aware of that. That's about all I have on the investigation at this point.
Okay,
thank you.
We'll now hear from U.S. Attorney for the Western District, Trini Ross.
The federal investigation is continuing. We're working again jointly with our state and local law enforcement partners regarding the threats that have been going around on the internet. We have a point of contact person in my office to deal specifically with those threats, as we have several prosecutors dealing with the investigation of the crime that took place on Saturday. So the U.S. Attorney's Office is actively engaged in this investigation. We will continue to be, and we'll continue to work with our law enforcement partners and the District Attorney's Office, DA Flynn, as necessary.
We'll now hear from Erie County District Attorney John Flynn.
So I want to touch on a couple of topics right here this afternoon. And I'll piggyback on what the mayor said at the end here. First of all, those of you who are local reporters know my MO and how I proceed with talking about investigations and matters during the course of the legal process. Some of you from out of town, let me explain how I work. Once an arraignment has happened, I pretty much shut down because the legal proceeding has started, and I just do not talk during the course of the legal proceeding. In this matter right here, obviously this is a very high-profile case. There's a lot of information out there. I made an exception for today. So today, Monday, being the first business day since Saturday, I've done a number of interviews today. I will continue to do some more interviews tonight. I'm here standing right now in front of you. But after today is over, I am done. And after today is over, the next proceeding that will take place will be the felony hearing. And once the felony hearing is over on Thursday, the matter is going to go, for lack of a better phrase, into grand jury posture. So once it goes into grand jury posture, the envelope of secrecy now is going to cover everything, and we're pretty much going to shut down all investigative, all prosecution information. So that's kind of the game plan going forward. I can tell you right now that there has been a new development with regard to the prosecution. As all of you know, on Saturday night at the arraignment, the defense attorney made a request for a forensic examination. That request was to the judge that 2 medical doctors look at my client and evaluate him to determine whether or not we can proceed. Less than 24 hours later, the defense attorney withdrew that request. So that forensic examination has now been withdrawn. I don't see the need to ask for it myself, so I'm not going to ask for it. The judge has the ability, sua sponte, on his own, for those of you who didn't take Latin, on his own to order the investigation, a forensic. He did not feel the need to do that, so the mental health forensic part of this has now become a moot point and is now off the table. So we are proceeding now to Thursday's felony hearing. One of 2 things is going to happen at that felony hearing. The defendant is either going to waive that felony hearing, or the felony hearing is going to happen on Thursday, and then we'll go forward. So, again, just kind of I'm just trying to, let everyone know in advance. Once that felony hearing happens on Thursday, the quote-unquote grand jury investigation is going to begin, and I will not be able to talk more about anything having to do with this investigation until there has been an indictment on this matter. Again, for those of you out of town, my MO is after an indictment, there will be an arraignment on the indictment, and I will do a press conference on the arraignment on the indictment. But then once I do a briefing on the arraignment on the indictment, I again shut down again until trial. So just kind of want to let everyone from out of town know how I operate. I've been operating that way for the past 5.5 years. I'm going to continue to operate that way, even though obviously this is a very high-profile case. The second thing I want to say is that, I understand that there is a court of public opinion out there. I understand that there's the narrative out there that there is so much evidence, it's overwhelming, this guy is guilty, this guy did it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I understand that court of opinion. I understand emotions are high. I understand the rawness of this matter. However, I do not operate in the court of public opinion. I operate in a court of law. And this defendant is innocent until proven guilty. Let me repeat that. He is innocent until proven guilty. He has only been charged right now with one charge, and that's it. It is an accusation, it is an allegation, and that's all it is. As a prosecutor, I have 3 communities that I have to protect their rights. I have to protect the rights of the public, the victims, and the defendant. And I have to ensure that the defendant has a fair trial here in Buffalo, New York. That is my job, to ensure a fair and impartial trial. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that that happens. The last thing I want to talk about, and I want to piggyback what the mayor said, there's a lot of chatter out there. There is a lot of threats out there that I'm hearing about and that we're hearing about in law enforcement. One of those threats happened yesterday. 52-year-old man from Buffalo yesterday, allegedly, and again, allegedly, called up a pizzeria at 12:05 p.m. and made threatening comments to the employee referencing what happened at Tops. 45 minutes later, allegedly, that same individual called up a brewery in downtown Buffalo and made similar threatening comments, again alluding to what happened at Tops. The pizzeria and the brewery called BPD. As usual, BPD did a great job, found out who this guy was, went and arrested him last night. We held him last night because it was a D felony, and under the New York State bail laws, we can hold someone overnight for a D felony, which we did. We held him overnight, and we arraigned him this morning on a D felony, making a terrorist threat, facing up to 7 years in jail. Now, what's ironic is that this is a non-bailable qualifying offense. And in this case here, the judge ordered a forensic on him as well. So he's being held pending a forensic. But once that forensic is over, he has to walk free. That's something we also got to tweak in the bail laws right there, where we can hold someone overnight and arrest him on a D felony and hold him on an appearance ticket, but after he gets arraigned, we can't hold him and put him on bail. We got to let him walk out the door, which is going to happen here in this case once the forensic is over. But I go off on a tangent there, I'm sorry. Let me get back to the threats here that's going on. This is what's going to happen if you make threats. You are going to get arrested, and then I am going to prosecute you. So let this case send a message out there to any tough guy or anyone who wants to be cute out there and sending messages or threatening anyone or threatening to do anyone or putting anything on social media. I will find you, and I will arrest you, and I will prosecute you. And I don't mean to speak for Trini, but so will she. So let this case send a message. Again, this man is innocent until proven guilty as well. He has just been charged. It's an allegation. I'm not saying he did it, but I'm saying he's facing 7 years in jail, and that's what anyone in the public is going to face if they want to threat and if they want to reference the awful tragedy of Tops.
Thank you, Mr. District Attorney. I want to thank the media for bearing with us. This is a very active working firehouse, so there might be more in and outs with fire apparatus. Now I want to just thank again law enforcement that has worked in a collective and collaborative way. Yesterday, I heard from the director of the National FBI, Director Wray, pledging the resources of the FBI at the very highest level. Steve Belongia, the special agent in charge of the FBI here in Buffalo, has been a tremendous partner, and we're going to hear from Special Agent in Charge Belongia right now.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make a couple of comments. First, there have been questions in the community about when the processing of the Tops grocery store will be completed. The FBI laboratory at Quantico has provided advanced tools and advanced training, teams that have been trained in special techniques that can be used to map the location, can be used to create digital models, can be used to create physical models, as well as mapping and the trajectory of bullets. This process is painstaking, it takes time, and we will continue as quickly as possible to process that scene so it can be released back to this community which relies on this grocery store so much. But I will say, we have to take our time, we have to be methodical. That is what the victims of this horrible tragedy deserves. Also, to the mayor's point, besides the evidence response resources that the FBI has provided, the entire FBI Buffalo office is dedicated to this investigation, along with enormous resources from our state, federal, and local partners, including the ATF. We have resources that have been provided by headquarters, including from our domestic terrorism unit, from our criminal investigative division, from our victim services division, who has sent approximately 10 individuals up to help care for the needs of the victims in this horrible tragedy. Along with that, our headquarters has sent up resources from our our employee assistance program, who is going to help, they are going to help tend to the needs of the first responders, not only at the FBI, but also with our state and local partners, including the Buffalo PD, who had a lot of officers that were in on that horrible scene. So we are putting all available resources on this investigation. All of us collectively, state, federal, and local, are working around the clock to get answers and get justice for the victims of this horrible, horrible crime. Thank you. Turn it over to Chief Garcia, our
Thank you, Steve. The Erie County Sheriff's Office continues to provide all resources, all manpower to both the Buffalo Police Department and the FBI here. I'm so proud to work shoulder to shoulder with Commissioner Joseph Gramaglia and Special Agent in Charge Stephen Belongia, and also our prosecution, the Honorable John Flynn, and the DA's office, and Ms. Trini Ross in the U.S. Attorney's Office. You can be confident that you have a great team in place, and everything will be done properly. I am so proud of the community. I walked around today, and this individual that came here and tried to divide the city of Buffalo and Erie County did not succeed. People are stronger. We're more united than ever, and kudos to all the people. My condolences and that of the Sheriff's Office goes out to all the victims and their families. In regards to incarcerated individual 157103, he continues to be in our custody. He continues to be on suicide watch, which means he's in a cloth smock, which is ligature proof, with a blanket, which is ligature proof. He's in a segregated unit aside from the rest of the general population, and that's for his safety. He continues to be offered both health, physical and mental health. I will ensure that he will continue to be safe from himself and from everyone else. Again, thank you to Mayor Brown, and thank you to all the law enforcement and working together. This is what makes Buffalo special. Thank you.
We'll now hear from the Majority Leader of the New York State Assembly, Crystal Peoples-Stokes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a community that is, without a doubt, in a lot of pain. People are hurting, but I want to commend law enforcement who are collectively working with the mayor and his team to do exactly what should happen, and that is make sure that justice prevails. I will remind you all, though, that as an African American, there are a lot of people in this community who are hurting because they know that justice for all is not specific enough. Sometimes people get left out of that justice. This can't happen this time. It can't happen this time. I understand, just like the guy who called in the threats to the pizzeria and to the beer establishment, you're innocent until you're proven guilty. But this young man was walking around with a camera on his head. He showed the whole world what he was doing. And I understand he got to go through a court. I get that. But a lot of the anger that people are having, aside from the fact that their loved ones have been murdered for going to the supermarket, is that justice is not specific enough. This can't be another one of those cases. I want to honor all of the people who have called my office from all over the state offering support to this community, including the businesses that have called and offered to support the families with food, with hotels, with airlines to be able to get here to come to a funeral, including the people who are willing to help pay for the funeral. People have poured out their love to Buffalo, and that's what we're going to pour back. That's how we're going to heal. People who want to bring us hate and expect us to assume that hate because that's what they have is not going to happen here. There will not be an outpouring of hate. There will be an outpouring of healing. We will all heal together, and we will ensure this time, Mr. DA, Mr. Law Enforcement, and Ms. Trini, that justice for all is specific enough, and it means everybody gets justice in America. Thank you.
We'll now hear from the Erie County Executive, Mark Polenkars.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and on behalf of the people of Erie County, I just want to commend the tremendous work of the entire team here, starting, of course, with the City of Buffalo and the Buffalo Police Department. It truly has been a united effort to address this. The majority leader is correct. There's a lot of people in pain. There's a lot of people hurting, and truthfully, none more so than the families of those who were taken on Saturday. The Erie County Medical Examiner's Office is in the process of performing the autopsies. We've had calls as to when the deceased will be released to the families through their funeral directors. I've been advised by the Erie County Medical Examiner's Office they expect to complete the autopsies by the end of day on Wednesday. There is a process that has to be followed to ensure that the evidence that is provided to the District Attorney's Office so that they can successfully prosecute this matter is followed to a T. And therefore, they do anticipate that they should be able to complete that process for each of the deceased by the end of Wednesday. As a family member, if you have questions, you should contact your funeral director, and the director will make the direct contact then to the Erie County Medical Examiner's Office. The Erie County Department of Mental Health has been coordinating mental health services for the community. As most people know, we have a drop-in center at the Johnny B. Wiley Center, just not too far away from here, 1100 Jefferson. We started that yesterday, 9 to 9. It is open today, 9 to 9. We've had an increased usage at the Johnny B. Wiley Center for both adults, and we have specialized services for children. And therefore, we will be continuing the Johnny B. Wiley Center drop-in mental health service counseling. If you just want to talk to somebody, regardless of whether you are at the scene, you are a relative of a victim, or just someone who's in pain, like we know so many in our community are, you can come down to the Johnny B. Wiley Center and you will have a discussion with a trained counselor. For those who are not able to go to the Johnny B. Wiley Center, we also, of course, have our 24-hour crisis hotline through Crisis Services. You can call 716-834-3131 to talk to a trained individual anytime. Doesn't matter if it's afternoon or 3 o'clock in the morning. It is a 24-hour staffed phone number, and I want to thank everyone in the local crisis intervention field and mental health counselors. They've all come together to offer their services so that the people of this community can heal as quickly as possible. And then, of course, we know that the Top supermarket is closed, and it is an integral part of this community, and because of its closure, it has basically created a food desert in this neighborhood. So there are many partners who, of course, are working to ensure that the community has access to fresh quality food. And I want to thank Tops Markets as well as Feed More of Western New York for collaborating with the Erie County Department of Social Services and Department of Health. There is a food distribution center at the Resource Council of Western New York building at 347 East Ferry, which is literally a couple blocks away from the site. There are stores, of course, neighborhood stores that exist, but many of them don't have fresh food and meats and vegetables. There is a refrigerated vehicle on site that's being provided by Tops Markets, and Feed More of Western New York is doing the same thing so that individuals do not have to travel out of their immediate neighborhood to access fresh quality food. And the goal is to continue that through May 27th. We understand that there was a significant line of individuals there today, and that will continue. We may open up another site in the immediate area so that there is sufficient locations for the public to get to. If we do open that other site, we will announce it to the general public. But once again, we are all working together to not only help this neighborhood that's in crisis and the individuals who unfortunately are dealing with serious mental health concerns as a result of this, but to heal as a community so that we are stronger. If this gentleman came here to hopefully to divide our community, he did the complete opposite. We are united like we've never been before. Thank you.
This mass shooting event in Buffalo has brought together many elected officials at every level of government, elected representatives working to make sure the people of this community are taken care of in the aftermath of this horrible violence. We're joined by Council President Darius Pridgeon. We're going to hear from the Council President.
Thank you, Mayor. And Buffalo is known as the city of good neighbors. And that's why it took somebody to come from outside of Buffalo to come into the city of good neighbors. It wasn't somebody from inside. But what happened, and if you walk these streets right now, people have arrived from not just Western New York, but from across the country. People have come into our churches, people have offered help, and people have stood up. But I want to be clear, it's not enough to send money if we don't stand up against racism, if we don't stand up against those who feel that white supremacy as a system is okay. And so I've been encouraging people who have called me all day long to say, what can I do? Tell the truth. Tell the truth that this is not the only racist and not the only white supremacist believer in our country. And have the uncomfortable conversations at home. Have the uncomfortable conversations on your job. Lose some friends who disagree with you. And when you say to someone, especially someone who has been through this tragedy, I'm checking on you. If you just say I'm checking on you, it's not enough. After saying I'm checking on you, you might want to stand up and say, and what happened in Buffalo, New York was horrible and horrific and should not be tolerated in any country, in any community. Our community is stronger. I'm joined by Common Council members who are here. We're stronger, and we're going to get stronger. We may not be the same, but we're going to be okay. Finally, and thank you, Mayor, I'm most concerned, and thank you, County Executive, for the counselors. I had to send 2 teenagers to school today. My wife said no. I said yes. I won. About 11 o'clock, I lost because I called her and said, you can go get them from school. And when she picked up my youngest, he had already had a horrible day. Our community needs to take advantage of those mental health counselors, and not only our community, but communities who are affected and hurting across this country to make sure we take care of us. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for your leadership and to all of our
A city in pain. We've been listening to an update from various officials in Buffalo, New York after that horrific racist rampage on Saturday at the grocery store, targeted because the grocery store is in a predominantly black area. The officials announced that the suspect is in custody. He remains on suicide watch. He's isolated in jail. Officials also detailing a series of other threats over the last few days in Buffalo, including some on social media. A different individual who allegedly called 2 businesses and referenced Saturday's massacre, who is now potentially facing jail time himself. CNN's Brian Todd is in Conklin, New York, where the suspected shooter is from, several hours away from Buffalo. And Brian, what stood out to you when you heard the officials talking about the investigation?
Well, Jake, what stood out to me is the new information that we're getting that this suspect, Peyton Genren, visited Buffalo in early March. That is very significant, and it speaks to the planning that he allegedly did for this attack. Now, we need more details. Of course, there are reports out there that he scoped out that particular store, but the officials didn't really allude to that. We do know that they did say earlier today that they believe that he planned on leaving that store after his attack and going to other stores, possibly down the street. So, of course, you put those 2 items together, that he visited Buffalo in early March. Did he actually visit that store and scope it out in some detail? It looks like, given the visit in early March and the plan to go down the street, that he might have at least scoped out that store and a couple of others, Jake.
All right, Brian Todd, thanks so much. In the wake of Saturday's attack, Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney of Wyoming went after the leaders of her own party, tweeting, quote, "The House GOP leadership has enabled white nationalism, white supremacy, and anti-Semitism. History has taught us that what begins with words ends in far worse. GOP leaders must renounce and reject these views and those who hold them," unquote. So what exactly is Congresswoman Cheney talking about? Well, you can look at other things from her caucus that she has criticized, such as comments from members of her party that mesh rather seamlessly with the racist, false, white replacement theory.
We know what the Democrats are up to here. They want open borders. This is exactly their strategy. They want to replace the American electorate.
For many Americans, what seems to be happening, or what they believe right now is happening, is what appears to them is we're replacing national-born American, native-born Americans to permanently transform the political landscape of this very nation.
This administration wants complete open borders, and you have to ask yourself why. Is it really they want to remake the demographics of America to ensure that they stay in power forever? Is that what's happening here?
Not to mention, of course, this Facebook ad from Cheney's replacement in the Republican leadership, Congresswoman Elise Stefanik of New York, or Congressman Paul Gosar and Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who spoke at a white supremacist conference where that bigotry is pushed rather shamelessly. Let's discuss all of this with former NAACP President Cordell William Brooks and Tim Wise, who's author of Dispatches from the Race War. Tim, how much do you think lawmakers and TV personalities who push white replacement theory or even something that echoes white replacement theory are to blame for this dangerous ideology spreading to the point that we see actions like this?
Well, they're absolutely to blame. Listen, words have consequences, and these are not simple conservative positions on immigration. You know, we've long had debates about what's the best immigration policy and what's the effect of immigration on wages and taxes, and that's fine. But the difference here, it's categorical. Replacement theory is premised on two things that make violence inevitable when enough people hear it. Number one, it's conspiratorial. It's not simply, oh, those silly liberals, they just don't understand what they're doing. It's, oh no, those liberals / Jews / globalists / whomever are deliberately trying to hurt you, maybe even kill you. Tucker Carlson has said that on his show hundreds of times. The second thing is it's posed as an existential threat. It's not just that they're evil people who are conspiring to, you know, maybe raise your taxes or something like that. They're literally trying to harm you, if not eliminate you, genocide you, exterminate you. Once you go down that road, once you accept that idea of evil, pernicious intent on the part of your adversaries, all bets are off. You can't just have a debate anymore about immigration. It's now kill or be killed. They are responsible because that rhetoric is inherently irresponsible.
And Cornell, the killer, the suspected killer, he wrote a screed in which he talked at length about his hideous ideology. He did not mention any particular congressman or any particular channel. He talked about being radicalized online. Now, Congresswoman Cheney, she's calling on Republican leaders to publicly reject white supremacy, racism, anti-Semitism, as well as people who believe in it. Explain why, if this individual didn't cite any Republican politicians or Fox personalities, why you still think it is important for them to be condemned if they are repeating, echoing, parroting the same kind of racist theory.
Absolutely. So, Jake, let's be clear about this. The racial terrorist in Buffalo cites in his screed, his manifesto, as it were, other racial terrorists as examples and the Great Replacement theory. The problem here is we have elected officials legitimating, authenticating, sanitizing, homogenizing Great Replacement theory, making it mainstream. And so whether you have, when you have a racial terrorist citing other racial terrorists and citing their thinking, their theory, their conspiratorial imaginings as elected officials, members of Congress are literally giving that license, giving that legitimacy. It is dangerous, right? So in other words, if you go back to Senator Bilbo back in the 1940s, the senator from Mississippi, who articulated a early version of the Great Replacement theory, members of Congress then called that out, condemned it because they understood how dangerous it was. And so the point being here is you can whitewash white supremacy, you can try to homogenize white supremacy. It doesn't make it any less dangerous. In other words, words precede bullets.
Yeah.
Let's be clear about it. Rhetoric precedes the taking of life. And that's what we saw in Buffalo.
So, Tim, the shooter seems to have been radicalized rather quickly. If you believe his screed, he writes about starting to browse message boards in May 2020 because he was bored. And 2 years later, here we are.
Yeah. Well, it is incredibly disturbing how fast that happened. But listen, those message boards are filled with incredibly intense propaganda. And sadly, a lot of young people, he said he saw a bunch of memes. And that's what convinced him. Well, memes are not evidence. Memes are not footnotes. Memes are not facts. But unfortunately, we don't teach young people in our schools critical thinking, media skills. We don't, we got young people who sometimes grow up thinking that if they see a meme or they see something on social media, that it's true. We need desperately to be training our young people to discern truth from falsehood. And going back real quick to your last question about, he didn't blame Tucker Carlson or any particular elected official. Let's be clear. The people on 4chan and these image boards, Reddit threads, and other places where he was radicalized, those folks are constantly flacking and adding and endorsing Tucker Carlson, talking about how wonderful those folks are, Paul Gosar, all of those folks. They amplify them. So it creates a feedback loop where the extremes online take, encouragement from the mainstream, and then the mainstream feeds back onto that. So that's why there's this it doesn't have to be that person X is responsible for action Y, but it is the doom loop that is created by the extreme and the mainstream together that causes these things and will continue to cause them until Republicans in this country and the larger conservative movement come out and condemn it. If they had done that after Charlottesville, if they had done that after Dylan Roof, if they had come out and said, we condemn not just the killer, not just the killing, but the theory that they said was behind it, we might not be here. And they refused to do that.
Tim Wise, Cornell Brooks, thanks to both of you. Really appreciate it. From one candidate's unexpected surge to another's health scare, the drama playing out in a critical primary election from the same Commonwealth where voters helped secure the presidency for Joe Biden. Stay with us.
Years ago, and we decided that we wanted to have a freshman academy community service project, and we decided part of that was going to be working with spreading awareness of modern day slavery.
At the end of your presentation, you need to tell me how that issue connects to your poem.
There's probably 300, 400 kids in the freshman academy. We had all of their core teachers make sure on My Freedom Day that they were teaching about that topic. And now we've got not just our core classes doing it, but also our elective classes.
Okay guys, so this is what we're going to do today as far as packing. You are going to grab a Ziploc bag, and then you are going to start here.
So when we first started this was exclusively for the freshman class, but it was such a hit with all of the classes that every year we've grown and added the classes in, so now it's a school-wide event.
And who are you helping?
So we have two groups, and both of those organizations work towards ending human trafficking or helping those that are in need. It's been amazing because our students have really embraced the idea of learning about modern slavery and embraced the idea of what is human trafficking, how it has impacted them, and it's been a very popular topic to learn about and to participate in.
I'm James Roby. I'm the Global Head of Environmental Sustainability at Capgemini. People often ask, why should businesses care about sustainability? Well, first of all, quite frankly, an unsustainable pathway is not going to be good for any business. Businesses are reliant on having consumers that will buy from them. They're reliant on having employees who want to work for them. Increasingly, all the stakeholders of the business are asking difficult questions. So businesses which aren't taking sustainability seriously essentially are going to be out of business. But in reality, it's never too late to start. A great way to start is by trying to understand your own impacts as an organisation. Perhaps calculate your carbon footprint. Ultimately, we need everybody on this journey. So why not start today?
In our politics lead, Pennsylvania voters are headed to the polls tomorrow to choose their party's nominees for a key Senate seat, but not without some last-minute twists and turns. As CNN's Jeff Zeleny reports, the Democrat leading the polls suffered a minor stroke and has been hospitalized since Friday, and the highly competitive Republican race is seeing a surge from a candidate who not only pushes lies about the 2020 election, but has a history of anti-Muslim and anti-gay bigotry, though she now says she will not back the eventual nominee if she does not win.
A chaotic close to the Pennsylvania Senate primary. The leading Democratic candidate, John Fetterman, will spend Election Day in the hospital, recovering from a stroke he suffered late last week that his campaign did not reveal until Sunday in this video with his wife by his side.
We hit a little bump on the campaign trail.
It was on Friday. I just wasn't feeling very well, so I decided, you know what, I need to get checked out, so I went to the hospital.
You get checked out.
Yeah.
On the eve of the primary in one of the nation's most closely watched Senate races, far more drama and uncertainty on the Republican side, where it's a three-way fight to the finish. A late grassroots surge from Kathy Barnett is threatening to upend a vicious, months-long battle between TV celebrity Dr. Mehmet Oz and David McCormick, a former hedge fund executive and Army veteran. All three are trying to win over undecided voters. Donald Trump hangs heavy over the race, where his endorsement of Oz has outraged many hardcore members of the MAGA movement who are turning to Barnett. Her candidacy caught fire with a compelling personal story and repeated false claims the 2020 election was stolen.
How are you going to take someone who can't even galvanize his own base, put them in a general, and think somehow he's electable? I don't think so.
In a radio interview today, Barnett would not commit to supporting the GOP nominee if she doesn't win.
Do you believe that's dangerous for the party, given how important this seat is?
Well, listen, I believe the stakes are so high. I think we as Republicans have to win this seat. And so I believe I'm going to win this primary. But if I weren't to win, then I would support whoever the candidate was that was selected by the voters.
Republicans are not deciding whether to choose a candidate in Trump's mold. That's been settled. But rather how Trumpian they hope their next senator will be.
Dr. Oz is a man who truly believes in Make America Great Again.
Oz has struggled to close the sale with conservatives like Rich Hohenschildt.
Donald Trump is not Jesus. He's capable of making a mistake. The stuff I've seen about Oz, he doesn't come across to me as a conservative.
Even President Trump's endorsement is not enough to sway you.
No, it's not.
Democrats have long seen Pennsylvania as the best chance to pick up a seat to help hold their Senate majority. The retirement of Republican Senator Pat Toomey gives the party a rare opening. Fetterman, the state's lieutenant governor, has maintained the edge in a three-way contest with Connor Lamb and Malcolm Kenyatta. But it's an open question whether his stroke and being off the campaign trail will influence the race.
And Giselle Fetterman tells our colleague Jessica Dean that her husband is doing great but impatient to get out of the hospital. But Jake, in one of the many twists and turns of this Pennsylvania primary, he will not be out of the hospital on Election Day. That could take up to a week. So all eyes on that race. But it is the Republican side of the ticket that has many open questions here with certainly consequences for November.
Absolutely. Jake. Jeff Zeleny in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Thanks so much. Tune in tomorrow night.
Hello, I'm Bianca Nobilo in London. We're now going to leave the lead with Jake Tapper to take a deeper look at today's international stories for our viewers around the world. And I'll be bringing you the Global Brief in just a few minutes, where you'll get a daily wrap of international news. Movement in Mariupol. The nearly 3-month-long siege at the Azovstal steel plant may be nearing an end. Ukraine's Azov regiment has just released a vague statement and this video referring to a new decision affecting the entire Mariupol garrison what we know straight ahead. And in the east, Ukraine has made a big push from Kharkiv to the border with Russia, reclaiming that territory. We'll have a full battlefield